Hi, friends. How are you? We're on the eve of the new moon in Sagittarius, and I bet you guys are kind of popping with some optimism, feeling more hopeful, because that's what the sign of Sagittarius brings to us. Sagittarius, you know, on either side of Sagittarius is Scorpio, intensity, transformation. And on the other side of Sagittarius is Capricorn, who's pretty serious and isolated and just a workaholic. And so Sagittarius kind of makes up for the intensity. The uh, these signs tend to be more introverted and is like, I'm with these two. We're going to have some fun, and aims his arrow to high goals and having fun. Sagittarius brings fire and enthusiasm and exuberance to the show. It's the last sign of fall. And so today, of course, with all the news happening, but in particular, the judgments that were handed down, destroying Donald's position of absolute immunity when it comes to impeachment, and the judge saying and presidents are not kings. I love how this comes down on the eve of a new moon in Sagittarius, when Sagittarius rules, courts, law enforcement. And so anything that has to do with law. And so that's kind of a preview what's happening. And I want the eclipse clicks, you can trace everything to this past year. And so I know many of you have been following along, and I was like, I want to tell them a story tonight about what happened. And then I thought, I know you guys have been wanting an introductory astrology type thing. I don't know how to teach that. But instead, I'm going to tell you a story, and hopefully this will help you make the connections and the links. So, like tarot with the major arcana tells a story from the Fool, the one that is brand new and fresh, one of the most powerful cards in the zodiac. And it takes you through a journey all the way to the very end of one's life purpose, with hopefully success and fulfillment, and with the World card. Astrology, likewise, also tells a story. And the stories, just as there's a timeline with development, a story can be a lifelong story, or it can just be a momentary story, and you still have all those pieces that are in play. And so the astrology goes like this with the tarot cards, because we know each of the tarot cards is associated with a sign. There are 12 signs in the zodiac, okay? I really like comparing the Fool to the sign of Aries, but it's not. It's assigned to the planet Uranus. But anyway, Uranus is an air sign, and it feeds the fire of Aries beautifully. But Aries comes to us during the spring and has a lot of work to do. Aries is represented, it is ruled by Mars, and it is represented by the Emperor. Now, the Emperor has everything to do with I am. Like, I rule over the dominion. This is who I am. I'm all about me. And this is my world. Likewise, with child development, a young child is represented in the spring And Aries represents that new life that surges forth in the spring or the newborn. As that baby gets older, maybe terrible twos, when you get the mine, me, mine, that's all about possessions. And that has to do with the sign of Taurus. We have the Empress, who is pregnant and full of unlimited resources and potential. She's of the earth and abundance. The Empress is kind of like the secondary card associated with Taurus. It's actually the Hierophant. And I think that it has to do with establishment because Taurus is a fixed sign and it anchors the spring growing season. And you have to know who you are and what you have before you can go on. And then as the child gets a little older, we have the Lovers. So think of like early childhood when one learns how to communicate and has best friends. Don't think of this in terms of romantic love. Just think of it, we're going to just kind of talk about in like a theme of child and adult development, okay? So as a child grows older, they learn how to communicate. They have their best friends. They speak their own language. And there's just an awe and a wonder of just like a true, deeply abiding love between them. But they don't know what that is. It's just they're lovers. As the child grows, we see here they move around some more. The Chariot is represented by the sign of Cancer. Cancer is, the symbol for Cancer is the crab, and it has a shell that protects it. Well, the Chariot also protects, the castle in the background. It protects the boundaries. In fact, the sign of Cancer has to do with everything with our connective tissues that maybe protect our organs. The Chariot, see, this person is sitting in a protective space. Cancer is our digestive system. It's how we're nurtured, how we're fed. It's how we're protected and how we feel safe. The driver is encased in a chariot. And the Chariot, also Cancer, maintains balance just as the moon orbits around the earth and keeps the earth spinning. The Chariot with the sign of Cancer has everything to do with everything has to balance. Everything has to stay in rhythm. And everything has to be protected. This also has to do with the mother-child relationship, how you're fed, how you're nurtured, and how you feel safe in your world. And then, as the child gets older, maybe into high school, we're growing up here, they have the Strength card is represented by the sign of Leo. Leo has everything to do with the heart and one's creative expression and one falling in love. It is their true guiding, their soul force, what they meant to be here for. Just as the sun is the center of life force for our universe, that's what our heart is. We want our heart to shine brightly and to express that of who we intended to be here. Strength and Leo represent not only children, but your creativity and your true love. And so as you grow older and you know who you are, you know where your heart is, it comes to you want to pursue your goals and that creativity and that ambition. Well, there are certain responsibilities that come with that. There's certain types of work that comes with that. Like you can almost say being an apprentice, but the sign associated for what comes next is Virgo. We know it as the Hermit. The Hermit I see a lot with investigative work, detailed, refined work. This has everything to do with one's responsibilities at a job, with their coworkers, with their professional, um, with professions. You have to be accountable. You have to get things right, and you have to be willing to be of service. And so these are kind of like the personal things that we like need to master before we go out into the world and start interacting with the world. And by the time we get these things down, we know who we are, what we have, our resources, how we communicate, how we are nurtured, what our heart calls to us with creativity, and we know how we want to be of service in the world and interact with the world. Well, then comes Libra and the scales of justice. Libra has everything to do with partnership. It's the sign of marriage and maybe business partnerships, but it's mostly associated with love and relationships and marriage. And so this is when you're stepping out into the world. You've taken everything that you've been, and now you've stepped out into the world with that, and you have a sense of social justice and fairness. Again, here we have that balance. And then perhaps we get married. And then what happens with the eighth house of Scorpio, things change. Now we have shared resources. We have shared monies. We have to pay taxes. This is where things really transform because now you're merging with another person. And it might feel like the death of like one's adulthood and identity, but it's not. It's just changed into something else. And as we get older, we become wiser, time speeds up, things move so fast, but then there becomes an appreciation for you've moved beyond an apprenticeship, you've become more of, you're coming more into a mature adulthood, and now you are learning things from all over the world. You're traveling, you're integrating with other cultures, other ideas, other philosophies, where people start to become more philosophical and seeking the truth in their adulthood. Well, that's where the sign of Sagittarius comes in, that it rules long distance travel, like going over the seas, and it works to blend ideas, like maybe from different cultures. And that is where our higher reasoning and thinking comes from. This rules higher education. And it also has to do with philosophy and values. And so that's why it's related to law. And as we evolve, we become, some achieve being the CEO, the executive, the owner of a company. They've scaled the highest mountains to become the responsible leader in the most public way, of whether it's in the community or it's being a boss, but it's having that authority. It is having to climb the mountain of success. The reason why it's the devil is because if you make with a deal with the devil to get ahead, it's going to catch up with you. And that's how it's related to karma and the planet Saturn. Because Saturn is the taskmaster. If you want to get to the top, you're going to do it right. And if you don't do it right, you're going to tumble. And so that's what the devil has to do with. And so then as we age and maybe head into retirement, we have the humanitarian in the sign of Aquarius, full of hope for the greater good. The sign of Aquarius is known about hopes, wishes, friendships, science revolutionaries. This is taking all that you know and who you are and wanting to give back. And because you have so many life experiences, you're ready to give back to the greater good. And then finally, we have the sign of Pisces, the moon. I actually prefer the High Priestess or the Hanged Man. Actually, it's a Hanged Man because it gives us a new perspective. The Pisces has everything to do with retreat, seclusion. It can be very inspiring, inspirational. I mean, why would someone howl at the moon? It inspires. I have to express myself. It's the house I've talked about with hidden secrets, secret enemies, because it has to do with retreats and spiritualities. It rules over like churches and mosques. It can rule over hospitals and recuperation because it's about healing. This is also the sign of undoing. We've come full circle. I also like the world card here because it's completing the path, completing the cycle. And so astrology, like tarot, there's a theme of development, and you can take it through child development, adolescent development, early adulthood, middle, late adulthood, and it always follows a cycle. And the ancients knew this. They knew this, and so they didn't think linearly about things because back then, astrology is the oldest science. It invented calculus because they knew that there were relationships between their planet and the heavens and the sun, and they were able to do the math to figure it out. And because they knew these things operated around the world and they were not flat earthers, they knew the earth was round. And so they took their knowledge and they applied it as such. So instead of a linear fashion, they created a tool to talk about these things that would reflect a diagram of the hour, which an hourly map, which would become a horoscope. See how that works? You've heard me many times say this is the eastern horizon and this is the western horizon. The sun rises and sets. You've heard me talk about how we can't see things below the horizons, that we're not intended to, because this is all our personal stuff we have to work on before we join the world. Okay? And so, I hope this is a good start because I really want you to be able to follow along with me what's happening with the eclipse click dates today. It's really magnificent. Everything is on time, it's on schedule, and I hope it will allow you to feel better about what's happening. This Scorpio new moon worked really, really hard this month. For me as a Scorpio that is pretty intuitive and can anticipate a lot of things, this month was hard for me as well because Scorpio worked so hard to unearth things that maybe we've closed ourselves off to or we haven't wanted to look at. Well, it gets uncomfortable when the light starts to shine there. But Scorpio always knows where the diamonds in the rough are. And so she's unearthed those things, and because she knows the permanency of what's coming ahead. And so with this Sagittarius new moon, we kind of get a break and we get a little bit of a playground to enjoy and set our goals in a more comfortable manner as we head into January 2020. So this is the end of part 1, and then we're going to head to part 2.